I can see why the community made him A tier. Chat, actually, this is... I'm gonna ask this as a poll. When ranking units, do you count as a green / yellow unit? Because that is something I've always just sort of assumed. What the hell? Oh, that's not my controller. I'm alt-tabbed. But I don't know how people feel about it. Because I don't, and I don't penalize for red units either. Like, if a unit's a red unit recruit, I'm not going to penalize them for that. But I don't know how others feel about that. And I'm curious. I usually only consider time as a blue unit. Me too, because I would consider, you know, that's when they're actually in your army, right? I don't see a reason not to. I mean, the reason that I would say is they're not in your army. They're not in your control. So why are we... Like, I don't see a reason to account for it, personally. A really good example is Pent is useful as a green unit. But that's an element of the map. That's not something you have any control over. Physic up yellow to barn. I'm gonna penalize Khalil for using my Meteor in 3-10. Skill issue, just traded off of her, smiley face. Move Riss here. Can you see me instinctively hitting the L button when I'm going to staff? Because I've been playing Cerulean Crescent and I want to skip staff animations. I personally don't rank units, but it makes sense that you would consider the time as red, green, and yellow units. I just don't see it. I don't understand why... Because the way that I look at it, right, is it's not the same, we're rating them from a mechanical perspective, right? We're not judging them as characters. And so if we're looking at things mechanically, don't we just factor in the times in which they are mechanically under our control? The only times when people will say WRPG instead of CRPG are people who grew up in the 2000s or the 80s. I wonder how much, like, the subgenre names are influenced by age as well. They feel like a map gimmick while they're NPC units. That's how I feel. Especially if they're, you know, if they're NPCs that can't be recruited. Then it's like, well, what are we even doing here? Fuck. I didn't realize he was in range. Nice effective damage, Mia. Jesus Christ. Vantage Gaming. Alright, we lose 2 units. I think we restart. I rank units for how much easier they make the game when you're using them, so it makes sense to give credit for how much they help as a greener unit. But you're not using them then. The map is using them. Like, I also rank units based on how much easier they make the game when you're using them, but you're not using them when they're, you know, a green unit or a red unit or something. You don't have any choice over the matter, in fact. Why does choice matter? They're helping. But you said how much easier they make the game when you're using them. If you're not using them, then why are we accounting for it? I'm surprised to see, this is another one where I'm surprised to see the rating is leaning towards not what I would have expected. Maybe I'm out of touch. Am I the old out of touch lady now? Oh, fuck, I missed the opportunity to make a your choices really matter joke. The line gets hazy. How much credit does Sed get for 4x before vanishing the whole game? Well, and then the question becomes as well, because I know a lot of people penalize Ike in Radiant Dawn for being an incredibly difficult boss. And I'll be honest, I find that kind of silly. Ike is one of the strongest units in Radiant Dawn. Yeah, he's a pain in the ass when you have to fight him as the Dawn Brigade in 3-13. But, like, why are we penalizing that, you know? That's not a unit under your control at that point. That's the enemy on the map. Between this and 15 crit, I'm realizing I just have very different thoughts about game design and unit analysis and stuff than my audience. Which isn't a bad thing, you know, you don't need to agree with me. But I will break into your house and poop on your pillows. Just know, you know, that's what's happening now. So it wasn't my cat who pooped on my pillows? Well, your cat is actually working as an agent of mine. I'm sorry to have to break it to you this way. I penalize Percy because I find the paralog hard. I mean, I disagree with that both in terms of, like, I don't penalize units for them being easy or hard to recruit because it's a very subjective, like, obviously tiering is subjective in general, but what maps are hard is going to vary from person to person. I see a lot of people say Ignatius's map is, like, the hardest map in Conquest, and I think it's really fucking easy, and that people are just afraid of playing fast. But Percy's map in particular, I think you always want to play Percy's map, even if you're not planning on using Percy, because it is one of the biggest sources of gold in the Conquest campaign and in Rev. You know, if you are using Arthur, you're doing it for the Percy map. But especially in Conquest, where Arthur is like basically gets married for free. Boyd him. But yeah, I also don't find Percy's paralog to be difficult. I think it's a pretty easy map as long as you're willing to use the dragon veins, which you should because, you know, it gives you the money as well. I don't think that's a map where you want to optimize for experience. The three big Conquest paralogs are Percy Dollars, Ophelia Books, Nina Treasure. Yeah, the Nina Treasure is definitely the weak link of those three, in my opinion. Both because getting that treasure can be more difficult than actually clearing the map, even if you're not cheesing it. And because the value of that treasure, I think, is, like, less in my mind. Unless you're doing a Shining Bow build, in which case, like, it's invaluable. Ooh, the zoomies. I'm actually playing Lunatic Conquest right now, and I lost Wozu to a Wyvern Knight, so Percy will stay in F tier forever. I think that's very silly. Like, obviously, tier things however you want. It's just video games. But I do think that is a very silly way to approach things, and it's not a tier list that I would take seriously. And, like, you don't need me to take your tier list seriously. These are just for fun, after all. And the only person who you should care about liking your tier list is you. But that doesn't stop me from saying that I think it's a very silly approach. You know, I'm allowed to disagree, and that's not me calling you a bad person or a dumb person or anything else like that. Maybe a bit of a silly goose. Fuck! You get doubled, don't you? No! He lives! Okay. We're goated. Poor positioning? No, it's Percy's fault. Was Percy the one who killed him? Or do we just put the generic Wyvern in F tier instead? Judging by Kroth Naga, his ability to body block in the prison escape. I just finished chapter 1 of CC. What do you think? Do you like it? Sonic Sword for effective damage against flyers. Hell yeah. I'm low on meat, so if someone wants to give me a goose, I'll accept it, serious or not. Alright, so this right here, this question, because the question was too long, it is basically, so not maps where you can recruit them. So I'm not talking about like Rutger is a red unit before you recruit him. I mean specifically something like Enna appears as a boss in Path of Radiance before she can be recruited. B-Route Amalda. Yeah, B-Route Amalda, you know, unrecruited Amalda. Basically, it's the same character, but they will never join your team, or they won't join your team at that point. No. Interesting. So I'm curious, because we have 100% no on this option. So I'm curious why 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll go here. I'm curious where the inconsistency comes from. Because if the idea is we're judging them for all of the contributions the character makes, rather than, if I'm understanding correctly, the logic given for, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not trying to like strawman anything, I might just be misunderstanding, but the logic for why we're counting green unit contributions is it's something the character does that makes the game easier. Is that not correct? So if that's the case, why are we not penalizing for something the character does that makes the game harder? Because right now we have 100% no votes. So there's literally no one who is consistent in judging based purely off of character. So I'm just curious where it comes from. The game counts her as such? What do you mean the game counts her as such? Do you mean in terms of like the kill counts that you get on the end credits? Because the game doesn't account for green unit kill counts at that point either. When it gives the end credits and it says like, how many kills has this unit gotten? If my purpose is to judge player units, I judge them as player units. I mean, that's where I'm at, right? That's where I'm at. I'm just curious for the people who judge as green and blue, but not red. And this isn't me saying anyone is objectively wrong. Like, ultimately tiering, as long as you are consistent within your criteria, I think that's what's important, because this is just a for fun thing, right? There's no... Despite what some people will try to tell you, tiering is not an objective science. It is always opinionated. Anyone who says they have the objective tiering is, I mean, they're fooling themselves. They think that their opinion is objective. I can judge Xavier being hard to recruit against him, but Enna as a boss feels separate. Really? Now that is interesting. So you would judge Xavier, but not Enna. I'm just surprised. Like, again, I want to be clear because people on the internet can sometimes, you know, be a little bit harsh about these things. I don't want to come off as harsh, you know, I don't want to... But that surprises me because that's two separate instances of what I view as the same thing, the red units. I also don't penalize for hard recruitments because I look at that as something that it's going to be case by case in terms of how hard it is. But I do penalize Xavier for the sleep sword because you basically need to use a sleep sword. And so, like, I penalize Sevier for the sleep sword in the same way I penalize Hugh for the gold. I view it as a concrete cost of recruitment rather than a maybe a cost thing. Kath I specifically count because I hate her. The only situation I would give a penalty to a red unit would be the difficulty of recruiting them, and even them, I have difficulty defending that position. Do the birthright conquest units you face on the opposite route count? Oh, I mean, maybe. At the very least, Ryoma and Xander and Scarlet and Perry and Laszlo are red units in Rev maps where you can't recruit them. The map where you get Caden and Keaton. Go forth, my army of yellow units. Do my bidding. This is the Path of Radiance endgame experience. No, my yellow unit! Kaze Conquest. This is not good, they're closing in. There are not enough fair ones. Someone, anyone, help! Go find Master Izuka at once. Lock in, Holy Guard. She did not lock in. She did not lock in. That's one of the promoted ones, too, which is unfortunate. Oh, unpromoted one going down. Look, Tabarn will carry. Tabarn will carry. Lovely, the boss has a siege tome. Yeah, it's not that bad. Tabarn carries. I choose rank units based on whether or not I use them. To use Hannibal, I need to recruit him. Whether or not I use Enna, I still have to fight her as a boss. Interesting. So then, do you rank the lords since they're force deployed? Or do you still consider it, like, optional because feeding them experience and stat boosters is an option? Which is why I rank lords, for what it's worth. Because I do think using a lord is optional, just like using FE4 units is optional. And the game is oftentimes less tedious and easier if you don't use every character in FE4 and Gaiden and Echoes. God, we're gonna be so cooked if a remake comes out and it has Echoes in it. The brain rot is everyone says Echoes now. Well, I guess SOV. If it's like an FE9 remake, would we say SOT? Because then that's so... T and V sound similar. Or honestly, FE7 and 6, Shadows of Alib, SOE. Only one that wouldn't sound confusing would be Shadows of Judgirl. But then its sequel, Shadows of Thracia, SOT, would be super confusing. Fire Emblem sought. Go, Holy Guard! I believe in you. Well, not that one, the other one. I believe in the other one. I believe in the other one! I don't know, it's an interesting conversation. Maybe I'll make this an Ice Rider. This feels like peak Ice Rider material. Just like chatting about tiering criteria while we watch the yellow units fucking die. That feels like the shit Ice Rider was created for. Because nobody watched the Let's Play of Hag because I streamed it, right? Name a hard paralogue. Basically any of the Awakening Kid paralogs, like Nah. So here's what I think about the Awakening paralogs, right? Here's what the conclusion that I came to in terms of the Awakening paralogs and how I would account for them, right? Is I'm using it as like an availability penalty of the average level you need to beat that paralog, right? Which doesn't really apply to Fate since the paralogs scale. But in terms of Awakening, right? Typically you want to be at a certain point before you, typically you want to be at a certain point before you take on those paralogs. And I view that in a no-grind context as, like, the availability. You need to be a certain amount into the campaign before that unit gets recruited. What's Na's paralog? That's the one with the walls that collapse and turn enemies on the map into functional ambush spawns. It is the most garbage paralog in the game. You can cheese it by using a Spot Pass unit. You do Spot Pass Ashnard. Spot Pass Ashnard gives you access to the only siege tome in the game, which is a dark tome, and that's how you cheese it because it's a kill boss map. But if you don't cheese it, it's so trash because the walls will collapse when you leave your enemies in range for them to get fucked over by the enemy. The enemy! Kaga good, new Fire Emblem bad. I know you're joking, Chris, but there are people who think like that. It's just that new equals bad, but like stapled onto... I think there's some amount of hipster cred that people get from playing the old Fire Emblems. Especially the ones that were never officially translated. I do think that's part of why FE4 gets overgassed, because I don't think it's a particularly good game. I think it's a good story. But it's one of those, it's a game, it's like FF4, honestly. FF4 and FE4 share a lot in common, and I think the big thing is that they are, from a gameplay perspective, pretty darn awful, but from a story perspective, kind of awesome. And how you feel about them as games is going to depend on how you feel about that. I hate hipster cred. I used to have, like, there's a part of my brain that still thinks that way because I used to be really into, like, well, I play the old Fire Emblems, but I like to think I've mostly grown out of it. There was a time when I called, like, Awakening a fake Fire Emblem, though, because it was, partially because it was the newest one, and partially because I'd never played it, because I didn't have a DS, I didn't have a 3DS at the time. Just sort of a childish way of looking at things. And now I play what are literally fake Fire Emblems and get paid for it. Because ROM hacks are fake Fire Emblems. Like, if we're being 100% for real, ROM hacks are just fake Fire Emblems. And that doesn't make them bad. I would argue they're better than the real ones. But they are still fake. I believe choosing a unit that makes my playthrough easier makes them high tier. If they make my playthrough harder, low tier, and then includes through paralogs and optional recruitments. That's fair. That's fair. Absolutely fair. That's not how I look at it, but I also think that's fair. You know, not everyone's got to look at things the way that I do.